Hi Year 12s. Today's video is focused on In Cold Blood and it's an activity designed to help you unpack and respond to an essay prompt. So for today you will need your In Cold Blood book and your In Cold Blood notes, and I will show you an essay prompt. Then I'll get you to pause the video, unpack the essay prompt, look at the key words, look what it's asking from you, create a plan, and then start the video again and have a look at what I've done and see if any of our ideas are similar, and check that you're on the right track. So the essay prompt for today is: In Cold Blood shows that crime affects different people in different ways. Discuss. So here we have a proposition style prompt. There's a statement, a proposition, and you need to reflect on it. You need to come up with a contention that addresses the key parts of the prompt, and you need to create 3 body paragraph topics that you could use in response to the prompt, making sure you address all aspects. So I would encourage you to pause the video now, do some planning of your own, and then after that's done, check back in and see what I've come up with. Okay, so when I look at this prompt, I notice that crime is essentially the key word here, and effects. So we're looking at the impact of crime, the ramifications of crime, what happens as the result of crime, and then different people in different ways. So it's asking me essentially to examine different characters and show off my understanding of how characters are impacted differently. So from this, I take that I don't want to just focus on victims of crime, and I don't just want to focus on perpetrators of crime. I want to show off my knowledge of both. So hopefully you also had those terms circled and you'd interpreted it in that way. Now let's have a look at the 3 body paragraphs that I think would work for this. So I've actually come up with as many as 5. Let's have a look at them and then let's see what best works together to get a bit of a thread that runs throughout the essay. So for my first idea, I've got that for criminals, crime is cyclical in nature. This means it's like a cycle. The more crimes they commit, the more alienated they become from society, and the more exposed they are to the influence of other criminals. In a society that's designed to punish rather than understand and rehabilitate, criminals remain criminals and continue to be detrimental to society. So you can tell my first paragraph aims to focus on criminals, perpetrators of crime, and I'm suggesting that crime is cyclical. Once you commit a crime, you kind of get stuck in that lifestyle and it's very hard to break that habit. So the effect of crime on criminals is that it's ongoing, that it's a difficult cycle to break, and that one crime usually leads to another. For my second paragraph, I was thinking about in response to the clutter murders. So there I've been really explicit about what crime I'm referring to. Some citizens seek vengeance and perceived justice in the form of capital punishment. However, Capote's depiction of the futility of capital punishment suggests that this desire is representative of the worst side of human nature. So unlike the first one where I focused on criminals, I was also thinking I could focus on citizens who are exposed to the crime, and as a result of that, they want revenge. But I've added some layers of complexity by also getting in there that through these people through the characterization of them, Capote is actually sending a message that capital punishment is futile and wrong. For my third paragraph, I have continued to look at citizens in Holcomb's response to the murders, but a very different response. So on the other hand, others who are guided by their faith and morals seek to forgive, even in response to the most violent and senseless of crimes. Those who do demonstrate that forgiveness can bring closure and allow people to move on from trauma. So very similar to the one prior, but rather than responding with vengeance, some people respond with forgiveness. So I'm hoping what you can see here is that even though the prompt has asked me about characters, I have not gone to the very simplistic interpretation of focusing on a singular character as the focus of my paragraph, but rather the ideas that those characters help us to understand better. So the cyclical nature of crime, the response of vengeance, or the response of forgiveness, rather than just focusing on an individual. The fourth one, for those who have been largely shielded from crime, the Clutter's murders erode their false sense of security that can often be attributed to their class and their wealth. Through their growing distrust and fear, Capote critiques the 1950s American class system, emphasizing the deadly consequences of class division. So again, looking at the citizens, but this time looking at how their sense of security that they have is entirely shattered in response to the Clutter murders. And then finally, I have that for those with a strong sense of justice, such as Dewey, the Clutter murders elucidate a sense of responsibility and moral obligation to bring closure for Holcomb, as well as a desire to understand the motivations of such a violent and unexpected crime. Capote illuminates the ramifications of that on Dewey and his family, but ultimately presents the capacity for people to move forward after a violent crime has occurred. So I've got 5 ideas here, and I wanted to show you 5 because I want you to be aware that sometimes you need to think a little bit longer rather than just coming up with the first 3 body paragraphs that spring to mind, but maybe get down a few extra ideas, making sure you don't waste time, and then really weighing up which are the best to use and why. So for example, with this one, and this one, I would be hesitant to use those as my 3 body paragraphs. Why? Because they're all focused on the citizens' responses to crime, and they are different responses, but they are not really different groups of people. So I would be addressing the different responses to crime aspect of the prompt, but I really wouldn't be addressing different people. So I would be much more inclined to use this body paragraph first because it shows off the impact of crime on criminals, which I think is really at the heart of what Capote's trying to do. So I'd be trying to show off my understanding of Capote's true messages by including that paragraph. Then I would probably only use one of the next 3 and only have one for citizens' responses. So really how I would make this decision would be based on what evidence I have in my arsenal. So what do I know best to be able to write the best body paragraph? So for me, my knowledge probably is quite good around this one, the false sense of security and how that is shattered. And the reason that I lean towards that one is because I've got a lot of impressive construction-based evidence for that. So I can talk about the thinning smoke from the bonfire. I can talk about the personification of imagination and how it unlocks the door and lets fear walk right in. So I think I've got a strong paragraph there. And then I think I would focus on Dewey for my third paragraph, and how he shows us a lot about justice and moral obligation and duty. And I think it's a good one to use last, because it also allows me to talk about the closure that occurs at the end of the novel. And I think it's really important that we're always using evidence in an essay from start to finish. And the end of the novel, those last few pages at the cemetery, is so powerful, and I could use those there. So this is what I would do for this essay. I hope it's been helpful. Hopefully you had some similar ideas to mine. If you didn't, that doesn't make your ideas wrong. It probably just makes them unique. But feel free to send through a plan to your teacher to get some feedback.